The world held its breath as cameras went live from Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang, Menglong's birthplace. On the day of his funeral, from early morning, streets were lined with thousands of mourners dressed in white. Chrysanthemums, banners, and candles. The sound of weeping echoed through the cold autumn air, blending with the slow drumbeats of the funeral procession. The broadcast opened with a haunting view, the black hearse crawling through a sea of grief, followed by family, colleagues, and an endless crowd of fans who had traveled from every corner of the country. This was not simply a farewell to a beloved star, it was a national tragedy unfolding in real time. The city itself had transformed. Shops closed their doors, traffic halted, and schools paused lessons for a moment of silence. Locals described the atmosphere as an entire city wrapped in mourning cloth. Banners hung from balconies read, "Goodbye, Menglong. We will never forget you." The funeral home was drowned in flowers sent from fans, friends, and fellow celebrities. Every bouquet carried a message of shock, love, and fury. The entire scene resembled a national day of grief rather than a single man's funeral. When Menglong's family arrived, the atmosphere grew heavier. His father walked with eyes hollow from sleepless nights, his steps trembling yet determined. Beside him was his mother, who had already become a symbol of sorrow. She wore no makeup, her face pale, her body frail, supported on both sides by relatives. As she approached the coffin draped in white, she collapsed to her knees, crying uncontrollably. The microphone caught her voice screaming, "My son did not choose this. He was forced." "This is not suicide," her words shattered the silence, spreading across the live broadcast like a thunderclap. Within minutes, her statement was repeated millions of times online, igniting fury among viewers who had suspected foul play ever since the forensic report revealed disturbing bruises and injuries. Moments later, the unimaginable happened. Overcome by grief, Menglong's mother fainted in front of the coffin. Medical staff rushed in, carrying her away on a stretcher. The scene shocked the nation. The cameras lingered on the empty wheelchair she had been sitting in moments before. As sobbing filled the hall, news anchors, breaking from their composed tones, whispered words of comfort but could not hide their trembling voices. The live comment feeds exploded, "This pain is too cruel. His mother knows the truth, she must not be silenced. This is not the end. This is the beginning of justice." Even as tragedy unfolded outside the funeral home a new movement erupted. Fans holding white flowers also carried banners and posters with slogans that challenged the official narrative. "Justice for Menglong. This is not suicide, stop the lies. The bruises tell the truth." The funeral procession, meant to be solemn, turned into a sea of both tears and demands. Chants began softly, then grew louder until they thundered across the crowd, "Justice! Justice!" The voices of thousands rose together, echoing against the walls of the city. The forensic evidence had already shifted the narrative. Reports confirmed that Menglong's body bore injuries inconsistent with a simple fall. There were bruises on his wrists and chest that suggested physical restraint, and older wounds that hinted at long-term abuse. These details, combined with his mother's heartbreaking public declaration, gave fans a fire that grief alone could not contain. Began as mourning had transformed into protest, a demand for truth. International media covering the funeral struggled to describe the atmosphere. One BBC reporter said, "I have covered many celebrity funerals, but I have never witnessed such a raw mixture of grief and outrage. This is a farewell. It is also an uprising." CNN described the event as a funeral turned courtroom, with the public acting as judge and jury against an industry long accused of exploitation. The live broadcast captured faces soaked in tears, hands raised with signs that read, "Not suicide." Teenagers who had idolized him cried out, "Saved us with his songs, why couldn't we save him?" Elderly fans who had followed his career stood in stunned silence, whispering prayers. Broadcast did not cut away, it lingered on every anguished face, every scream, every banner. For viewers at home, it felt like standing in the middle of the storm. As the coffin was finally lowered, the sound of collective sobbing drowned the solemn music. Fans outside held their flowers high in the air, chanting his name as though calling his spirit back. Thousands of candles lit the street, forming a river of light flowing toward the funeral hall. Reporters described it as a second Milky Way created by grief. When the live coverage concluded, Did not close with the usual scripted condolences. Instead, they repeated the words of Yu Menglong's mother, "He was forced. This was not his choice." Those words became the headline of every news site. Most shared phrase on social media. And the spark that turned one family's grief into a national demand for answers. As the live broadcast ended, the shockwaves only grew stronger. Across China, millions gathered in public squares, shopping malls, schools to hold their own vigils. In Beijing, hundreds of fans projected his image onto the side of a skyscraper. With the words, "Justice for Menglong." In Shanghai, crowds flooded the bund, chanting his name as they lit white lanterns that floated into the night sky. In Guangzhou, thousands stood in silence holding candles, tears reflecting the flickering flames. It was no longer just Xinjiang mourning its native son, it was all of China. News of Yu Menglong's mother being hospitalized added a devastating new layer to the tragedy. Hospitals released brief statements confirming she was in stable condition but suffering from extreme emotional shock. The image of her being carried away on a stretcher replayed endlessly on television and online. For many, it symbolized the unbearable weight of injustice, a mother who lost her son and refused to accept the explanation given to her. Her earlier words became immortalized, "I will fight until the end." Because the evidence is there. Forensic report, once a clinical document, now being quoted like scripture. Legal analysts on talk shows explained how the injuries found could not align with a self-inflicted fall. Activists seized on these details, demanding an independent investigation. Petitions gathered millions of signatures within hours, surpassing any previous online movement in the country. The slogan "Not Suicide" trended continuously, across screens like a mantra. Celebrities who had once remained silent now spoke out. A fellow actor posted, "Menglong was more than a colleague, he was my brother. I refuse to accept the word suicide when the evidence says otherwise." Another singer wrote, "If this can happen to him, it can happen to any of us. The truth must come out." Posts were shared hundreds of thousands of times, fueling the firestorm. The entertainment industry, under scrutiny for its harsh treatment of young stars, now faced its gravest reckoning. International attention magnified the pressure. The New York Times ran a front-page story titled "China Mourns Star Amid Questions of Abuse." The Guardian declared, "Yu Menglong's death exposes dark side of fame." Foreign commentators compared the outpouring of grief to state funerals, highlighting how one man's passing had become a mirror reflecting the pain of an entire generation. But beyond the headlines lay the ordinary people who made this movement powerful. Students painted murals on campus walls, depicting Yu Menglong with angel wings and the phrase "You live in our hearts." Taxi drivers placed his photo on their dashboards. Teachers used his story as a lesson in empathy and courage. Families who had never listened to his music lit incense for him as though he were one of their own. Collective mourning had crossed boundaries of age, class, and region. Authorities, facing overwhelming public pressure, promised to continue investigating. They acknowledged that new evidence had emerged and urged patience. The public was no longer willing to wait quietly. Protests outside entertainment agencies grew larger. With chants of "Tell us the truth," and "Stop hiding behind lies," police presence increased. Yet the demonstrations remained peaceful, by terrors more than violence. The movement also revealed the deeper scars within the industry. Former staffers came forward anonymously, describing how Yu Menglong had been trapped by brutal contracts, subjected to relentless pressure, and threatened when he resisted. Even claimed he confided that he feared for his life, though unverified. These accounts only fueled suspicion. As one commentator put it, "When a mother, thousands of fans, and a forensic report all say the same thing, can we ignore it?" The shock of the funeral reverberated across borders. Vigils appeared in Seoul, Tokyo, London, and New York, organized by diaspora communities and international fans. Videos of Chinese fans chanting "Justice for Menglong" circulated worldwide, subtitled into dozens of languages. His story had transcended national boundaries, becoming a universal cry against abuse, exploitation, and injustice. Even in death, Yu Menglong's influence grew. Songs surged to the top of streaming charts. His dramas were replayed on television, and his name became synonymous with courage in the face of cruelty. For many, supporting him posthumously was not only an act of remembrance but a statement of resistance. His mother's vow to fight for the truth became their vow as well. The live broadcast of his funeral, intended as a somber farewell, had become the ignition point for a movement that refused to be silenced. From Xinjiang to Beijing, from Shanghai to the world, his death had shaken the very pillars of the entertainment industry and forced a nation to confront questions it had long avoided. As night fell on the day of the funeral, the streets of Xinjiang glowed with thousands of candles. The cameras captured a final shot, a wide view of the city, every corner illuminated by light, every voice whispering his name. Anchor's closing words resonated deeply. He may be gone, but tonight, all of China carries him in its heart. The fight for truth begins here. The world now awaits the results of ongoing investigations, awaits the unmasking of those responsible, awaits the justice Menglong's mother, family, fans, and nation demand. Until that day arrives, memory of his funeral, the grief, the chants, the banners, the mother's collapse, remains etched in history as a turning point. Menglong's story is no longer just about a young star lost too soon. It is about a country confronting its shadows, there's undying love, and a people who refuse to let the truth be buried with him. His funeral was his farewell, but it was also the birth of something greater, a collective voice that will not be silenced until justice is done.